Good morning and welcome to the fourth edition of Talk About Teens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, founder of the Parent Tween Connection, and I'm joined by Deborah Davis and Elizabeth Stitt. We have put together this series of workshops together. We are all veteran educators in different aspects of education, and Deborah's out in Connecticut, I'm in Colorado, and Elizabeth is in California, and we all have clearly an array of geographical backgrounds, professional backgrounds, and we're excited to have this workshop for you. Now that we have grades from the first quarter, we can take that information and we can continue to help our students. So some of what we're going to be tackling today is actually based on what we've covered in prior workshops. So you can absolutely find those through the Parent Tween Connection, as well as through Deborah's and Elizabeth's businesses, which we'll hit as we go along. But if you have questions about like, oh, what do we talk about goal setting? Well, we talked about goal setting in our Rock Back to School workshop back in July. So just know that there's more information even beyond today. So in anticipation of today's workshop, we reached out to folks saying, hey, what questions do you have? What are you running into with your kiddos? And so some of the questions that we received and some questions that we've just heard over the years look like this. Well, what if there's a problem actually going on? How do I keep my kid from feeling badly about her less than stellar grades, perhaps? But what if my kiddo's grades are good, but he's actually just super anxious and super stressed all of the time? What if things are good? Should I still bother having a parent-teacher conference? What's the value in it if my kid's doing well? How do I keep my kiddos organized, especially in the middle school realm? This is something I know Elizabeth is passionate about. And then on my end, with the college admissions process, where do I even begin? For a lot of families, mom or dad may not have gone through a traditional quote unquote four-year collegiate experience. Maybe they didn't go to college here in this country. And even if they did, it's changed a lot in the last 20 to 30 years. So where do I even begin to support my students? So that's kind of where we're headed today. And we're going to get started with tips focused largely on middle school. But what we find and what Deborah, Elizabeth, and I have found over the course of this year as we've done these workshops together is that we actually all kind of have very similar ideas. So even if your kiddo is in high school, some of the things that Elizabeth talks about that are primarily geared toward middle school kiddos are still very applicable. So why do I keep saying middle school for Elizabeth, middle school for Elizabeth? Well, because in my estimation, Elizabeth is a goddess among mortals because she has dealt with those just like that time when you're like, what happened to my cute, loving, adorable, kind, respectful child? Who is this alien that has taken over my child's body? Elizabeth is a former middle school teacher. She taught in the middle schools for 25 years. She says, first and foremost, I'm a mother and a stepmother. She says, I've been through it all. Diapers, the terrible twos, the crazed teenage years, and even bidding my kids a fond adieu as they head off to college and into their real world. She says she supports parents through her own extensive experience and expertise because she's been there, she's done that, and she really does speak middle schooler. It's quite fascinating. She says, yes, parenting is hard work, but it can also be a ton of fun. So without further ado, we're going to pass it on over to the middle school whisperer, as it were.
Well, thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. And let me share my screen here and we should be ready to go. All right. So our fourth in our series, in our Talk About Teen series, this is the first quarter check-in. Just going to go over a few simple concepts, but they are so key to making a difference with your kids. If you can hold your child as being in progress, that is going to help alleviate so much of their anxiety. There's an enormous pressure right now for them to be traveling on a straight line towards that college admissions goal. And it's part of the reasons I became a parenting coach was because when I first started teaching, you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it would be like, I want to be the star quarterback. I want to be the rock star. I want to be the Olympian gold medalist. And nobody thought you needed to tell a 12-year-old that none of that was going to happen, probably. We would just go like, yay, that's great. Good for you. Today, you ask a 12-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to major in computer science and minor in business, or major in business and minor in computer science. And the weight of the world is sitting on their shoulders. We can help to counteract that. And one of the main ways that we do that is that we don't take each and every data point as the trajectory of where their life is headed. And we let them know life doesn't go that way. Life goes up and down. Sometimes life goes nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. And then all of a sudden things come together. You don't know what it's going to look like. You just keep working, and you are doing great for where you are right now. So when we talk about Carol Dweck's research of having a growth mindset, a few salient points. One is that just explaining to kids about the fact that people have growth mindsets and people have fixed mindsets, and that the fixed mindset says our brain is like a can that we don't know what's in it. And so, it's like we know something's in there, but we're not sure what, but it's limited. As compared to our brain is like a tree that's growing and sprouting and can grow more and more branches and can get denser and denser. Just explaining the potential of growth and how studying and repeating and working lays the neural pathway to make connections. How one of my favorite factoids is that when we have done aerobic exercise, our brain chemicals are primed for making those connections, those academic connections, which is why our athletes tend to do better than our non-athletes. So in helping them have a growth mindset, we want to support them not just with what's the assignment in front of them. We want to support them with the idea of how their brain is growing and how all this hard work they're putting in is building to something. And this is so important for the middle school, because since grades don't count during middle school, kids look at it and they're like, why should I do all this hard work? I don't get anything from it. And if you're just looking at grades, that's true. You don't get anything from it, especially if you're going from a public middle school into a public high school. You could have pretty much all D's and F's, and they're still going to put you into the high school. And kids know it, and that is very demotivating. So when we talk about growth mindset, we talk about connections, we talk about gray matter, and really like having our brain be as complex and dense as possible. That's one of the ways that we can motivate them. The other really salient idea of a growth mindset is how two little words can make a world of difference. And that's yet and still, right? So I have not mastered something yet. I am still working on it. And when we say that to our kids, we are giving them permission to be where they are, knowing that they can keep working on it, right? So like, oh, I got an F on my test. I'm so stupid. This is horrible. I can never do this. Sweetheart, just because you haven't gotten it yet doesn't mean you're not going to get there. You are still working on it. So let's sit down and look at a piece that we can work on. That was just a snapshot in time, that test. It's still there to learn. If you didn't get it today, you're going to get another piece. You'll get another piece tomorrow. So seeing kids as being in progress and having them have a growth mindset, so critical. Okay, part of how we praise kids, part of Carol Dweck's research showed us that when we focus not on their external qualities, like you're so smart, you're smart enough, you can do this, you're a really smart kid, I know you can learn algebra, you're really smart, I know you can write this essay. Instead, we focused on talking about their strategy, their effort, and their improvement. That is what actually supported them having a growth mindset and being in process. So let me just see if I have a slide that talks about, no, okay. Let's take just a moment, especially to talk about strategy, because sometimes people don't realize what does that mean when we support our kids with looking at a strategy. So for example, double checking your work is a strategy. Rereading is a strategy. Writing an outline before you sit down to write your essay is a strategy. Talking through an assignment with your teacher or your friend or your parent is a strategy, a good one for a lot of kids. Note cards that you have and you pull out of your backpack, and when you're driving to school or being driven to school, hopefully you're not driving, you're going through your note cards one last time. I used to have my students memorize poems, and I would have to memorize the poem too. And I would do it stanza by stanza, and I would put a stanza on a note card, and I would carry that puppy around with me wherever I went. And okay, don't tell, but yes, when I was driving, I'd come to a stoplight and I'd pull out my note card and I would read through it one more time, keeping an eye to see if the light was turning green. I would be on my morning walks. I would have my note card. It was a strategy. So helping your kids to identify which strategy they are using, helping them to see how, if they have a strategy for one class, how can it be tweaked to be applied to another class? These are going to help your kids be in progress and to help them adopt and maintain a growth mindset about where they are in school. Same goes for effort and improvement. And one last idea here, and that is that I talk to kids about cotton candy praise versus what I call Vollkornbrot praise. I don't know if you've ever gone to the market and seen that German bread that weighs about a pound. Each piece has so much nutrition and so much value in it. So, oh, you're the best. You're wonderful. You're so smart. You're my clever girl. That's all cotton candy praise, right? You get too much of that and it just makes you feel sick to your stomach. And you don't trust it anymore. So it doesn't count. Over here, we've got the substantive praise that says, this is how I see you being. That is helping you to improve. This is how I see you being. This is the effort that I see, right? So that might sound like practicing that extra 10 minutes every day absolutely has made a difference. You played that piece so much more musically than you did last week, right? That's connecting the work that they did, the effort that they put in, into the mastery or the outcome that they got, which is concrete and they can reproduce it. And that's part of the reason that when we focus on strategy, effort, and improvement, it feels comforting to a child and grounding to a child, because when they hear it, they go, okay, I can do that again. Whereas when you just say, you're the best, you're so smart, that's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen, we may think we're being our kids' cheerleader. And I'm actually a big believer in being our kids' cheerleader. But if we do it with cotton candy, it actually ends up making them feel insecure because they don't know that they can trust it. Whereas when we use Vollkornbrot praise, strategy, effort, and improvement, that gives them something that they can keep doing to keep improving. Okay. With our middle school kids, we are really wanting to help them go from us telling them what to do to them beginning to stand on their own feet with us as their guide, with them analyzing things. And part of the ways that we do that is with our questioning. So I would have a time of the week when you are focusing on the review of the week. And it might be Friday night, and it might be Sunday night, looking into the next week. It might even be the middle of the week, because that's when you guys can all do it. But if you're kind of looking at the last 7 days, what went well, right? In order to sustain energy, it is super important that we are able to identify what's going well. We have to be able to say, like, well, yes, we are making some improvement, because that, again, is motivating. When we look at the question, what went well this week, we're like, nothing. This week sucked. This week was the worst. It was awful. That does not allow us any energy or space to move forward. What was hard this week? Make it everything. Everything was hard this week. But when you ask, well, what was especially hard? And then you get quiet and you really let that answer well up. Now, you might be thinking with your academic hat on, Mom, Dad, but it probably will be a social issue that comes up when you say what was especially hard. And that's something that we need to remember when we're thinking about our middle school kids and their academics. And that is that in their brain, literally in their brain, the social emotional piece, the how am I developing, the pulling away from my parent, the establishing my independence, that is taking up big, big, big chunks of their brain energy, big chunks. So when we ask, what was hard this week? That might be the place where they finally communicate with you and let you know in a way. So when we have a designated time for checking in, and when we ask a question and then leave space for the answer, we have a much greater chance that we're going to really get to check in with our kid and really know truly what's going on with them. Okay, what are you going to focus on this coming week? I still remember the feeling of showing up on Monday morning and like English teacher going like, okay, we have an essay due on Friday. Going to science, great, your observation report is due on Friday. Go to history, our test on medieval guilds is on Friday. And just like feeling like it was on, and that the pressure was just tremendous. And that would be so overwhelming to me. I would feel like I can't do any of this. Like I just wanted to shut down. So when our parents support us by saying, you know, what's the one thing you're really going to focus on? What's the one thing that you're going to measure yourself by at the end of the week? That is much more manageable. And Mom, Dad, I want you to know that most of your kids could probably get an A in one class. But the switch from elementary school to middle school, where it's not only you get real grades and all those little points count, and middle school teachers are the worst. Oh my goodness gracious, they are picky. And I totally was in that camp, right? Every spelling mistake, every comma mistake, every mistake in your heading, not just if the heading was wrong, every mistake in your heading, I took off a point. And did I do it because I was the wickedest witch in the West? No, I did it because I wanted you to learn to pay attention to the little stuff now in middle school when the grades didn't really count. Because I didn't want you getting knocked down in high school when it was part of your GPA and part of your next step. So Yep, middle school teachers are going to be that way. That could be overwhelming for kids. You can help them by saying, what's the thing you're going to get right this week? What are you going to focus on? And then when you come to the next week to say what went well this week, you can specifically check in on that focus area. All right, this next question is important because it helps us know. This again is part of the critical thinking, and it's part of stepping into I am an individual who can advocate for myself. And that is, where do you need some help and how are you going to get it? I want that question to sink in because it is a very different way of approaching your child than saying, you know, this math grade is unacceptable and we have got to work to come up. So we are going to sit down and we are going to drill those math facts and we are going to do those problems again. All of that is a big, like, no, no, no. Like any self-respecting middle schooler is just going to be like, go away. And when I ask middle schoolers, what is it that you really want your parent to understand? The most common answer I get is a theme and variation on, I want them to back off. I want them to trust me. I want them to understand basically that I'm not an idiot. And yet we also know that middle school kids can be like total messes. So it's hard for us not to worry. But when we ask this question, where do you need some help? And how are you going to get it? That leaves space for our child to say, well, Mrs. Stitt has office hours Tuesday at lunch. I'm going to make sure that I go talk to her. Right? Now they are taking control. I also would love for you to do regular check-ins that focus on adulting skills. And hashtag adulting skills for me are things like, are you doing your laundry? Are you making your bed? Are you doing the family chores? Is the dog getting walked? What are some more sophisticated things that you can be learning at the same time? You know, if a middle school child can write a 1,500 word essay arguing whether or not Botticelli was a Renaissance man and why, a middle school kid can call the plumbing company, analyze who's a good plumber, call the plumber and schedule the plumber. And, you know, they're shouting out the whole time, Mom, is Tuesday at noon okay? But they can do that for you. They can certainly sit and wait for the music to go until somebody comes. There are all kinds of things middle schoolers can do. And it's our job to start giving them those micro experiences so that they're not slammed with it when they get to college. Other non-academic report card questions. Where are you taking ownership and responsibility for your ablutions in your health? Right? I am your mother. I should not still be telling you to brush your teeth. That should be automatic. How are you at getting out the door in the morning? Right? Like if I'm still waking you up, let's go back and find a strategy for you. Let's go back and find a system. And what about all your sports equipment, your books, the papers, your schedule? How are you doing on that? And then lastly, how are you demonstrating respect in the classroom? How are you making your classmates feel safe, welcome, and supported? In fact, this is my favorite question because I don't want to raise smart, able kids. I want to raise decent human beings. And that's our job as parents. That is our job, to send kids to school who are going to be respectful, kind, and take initiative in doing that. All right, finally, as you go into conferences, just keep in mind, you and missing apostrophe, you and your scholars teacher want what is best for your child. They may not sound like it. You may run up against, Mrs. Stitt, who's, she's going to take those 1 points off. But just trust that she wants what's best for your child. She may have a different view of how to get there, but trust what's in her heart. Believe me, you're not sitting around teaching middle school. if you don't really believe in your kids and really want to make a difference for them. All right, teachers are people too. Take the moment to say, how are you? How's your year going? And if things get heated, go back to your effective communication techniques, right? Go back to listening. Go back to using I statements to say what your perspective is at home. Try to find win-win solutions that support both the student and the teacher. That's it. If you are a middle school mom and you are watching this, I am super excited to announce my Wear Your Cape and Stand in Your Parenting Power Challenge. It's going to be 5 days. We're going to go through CAPE so that you are confident, authentic, proactive, and enthusiastic so that you can stand in your parenting power. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And Elizabeth, just to confirm, you do have access to the recordings of our other workshops from earlier this year accessible through your website, correct?
Through my website?
If you do, great. If not, that's fine. I just want to make sure that anybody who's watching that we know where to direct them so that they can get other information. I mean, certainly we do have it through Parent Tween Connection. And if that's where they go, they can absolutely get to you as well. So let's go ahead and take like a 5-minute bio break, and then we'll come back with Deborah talking about helping students who are transitioning from middle school into early high school. So she's going to be focusing on our 9th and 10th graders. So we'll be right back.
Welcome back to our next segment, which is going to be led by Deborah Davis, and I have the pleasure of introducing her. Deborah is fabulous, and don't let her long list of accomplishments intimidate you, because she's also a ton of fun. She is an award-winning author, speaker, and coach with over 3 decades of experience in middle school and high school. And she's helped countless families replace the pain typical of the tween and teen years by fostering positive and healthy relationships despite adolescent angst. She is the founder of the Awesome Mom Tribe and a mother herself, and she applies her experience in education to coaching parents now, but she's got all of those years of as an educator to bring to that and to bring to our conversation today. Armed with a sense of humor, she's got a BS in education from the University of Massachusetts and a master's in education in supervision from Emory University. She provides guidance, encouragement for moms so that moms feel confident and are able to foster healthy and positive relationships with their kids. Deborah has a book called How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door. I love this book. It is part story and part manual and 100% funny, wit, wisdom, and each chapter is so packed full, not only of the stories and the in the moments theirs, but useful sidebars and concrete exercises, so you really increase your skill level with a teen. And I love that perspective that parenting is a skill, and it's not a skill that we get a lot of preparation for. And she's got these great little tips that are going to help you up level what you're doing in your household. Deborah's previous titles include How to Get Your Happy On and the Love Affairs series. And now that I live right next to the county fairgrounds, I have a new appreciation for Deborah's love affairs. Deborah Ann Davis, take it away.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. You make me blush. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Is that working? Okay. So, nope, not yet. Okay, hang on. Here we go. All right. as Elizabeth said, I'm an author and I am a parenting coach with 25 years of teaching under my belt. And what I'm going to do today is talk about report cards as snapshots. This is part of the first quarter check-in, which is our entire show for today. But I want to talk about report cards as snapshots because I want to minimize their importance, because right now, report cards are capable of doing massive massacres of kids' self-worth. And I want to put an end to that. So first, we're going to look at report cards as tools, put them into perspective. And then we're going to look at developing your classroom relationships. And then we're going to talk about how to prepare for parent-teacher conferences. So, report cards. The thing is that too many people associate report cards with whether or not they're a good person. And a good report card means you're a good person, a bad report card means you're a bad person. And that's just not true. They are just snapshots about your teenager's life in school. And they are just a peek at what's going on 4 times a year, 4 peaks, that's all it is. So if you really want to know what's going on, you'll understand it after we get through what I'm covering today. I'm going to start with something I covered in the second episode of the series. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And I'm sharing this with you because this will help you become an objective observer for your report card reveal. So every tennis game has 3 people. You have player A and player B, and then you have the ref. So we have this tennis match going on where the player A serves the ball and it hits the net, and player A watches the ball go out of bounds. Player A gets totally frustrated and smacks himself on the head and says, "Oh, you idiot, how could you have let that happen?" and throws his hands up in the air and says, "I'm quitting tennis." Player B is on the other side of the net, watched the ball go out of bounds, and is sitting there going, "Woohoo, I am so good at tennis," even though player B didn't do anything. And then you have the ref. The ref watched the path of the ball as it went out of bounds, and the ref says the ball is out. The ref is being analytical and objective and is not being tossed and turned emotionally by what's going on with the people around him. Everybody has some player A and some player B in them, but you also have some of the ref in you. The objective is to bring your ref person, your inner ref, to the surface so that you're not being jerked around by other people's emotions and your own emotions. So that's especially, that's especially important for people when you're looking at the report cards. Thank you. The report cards create an emotional turmoil for everybody. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? If you harness your inner ref, you can look at the report cards for what they are. Tools with information that you can use to make your child successful in school. So if you're going to be a person who handles the report cards in the right way, then you need to have a 3-pronged mindset, because the report cards in the proper hands are a very powerful tool. Now, report cards in high school are different than report cards in middle school. In high school, they're starting to track how you're doing for your graduation. So you want it to be something that you can harness the power of in a strong, positive way. So first thing is that no matter what is going on with the report card, it cannot interfere with your love or your regard for your child. You need to know that, and more importantly, your child needs to know that. Grades are only bits of information. That's it, just information. And you can take that information and you can help tweak it to help your child reach success. So if things are not mastered yet, the report card will show you that, so you can provide some support. If things are being mastered, then your report card is showing that, and you are on the path to helping your child be successful. The third thing that you have to convey to your kids is that guilt and blame, none of that negativity is appropriate. It is completely 100% destructive. So if your child looks at the grades and think they are a reflection of who your child is, then that is something you need to change. And that was what this discussion's about. And it isn't just about how your child perceives it, it's about how parents perceive it. So many parents think good grades equals a good parent, and bad grades means it's a bad parent. No, 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 no. That is absolutely, positively not true. Reality is, if you're thinking that, then your kids are thinking that. And your child is so worried that if you're disappointed in them, that you're not going to love them the same way. And that creates anxiety. And they don't say that to you. Your child doesn't come up to you and say, I'm worried that you're not going to love me as much if I don't do well on my report card. They hide that, and it's quietly festers inside them, and it messes with their self-worth. If you tell them that well, first of all, I'm going to say, you need to tell them right away that that's not true. That's the first thing. The second thing is to keep your objective clear in your head, that you want your kids to enjoy school and you want them to succeed in school. And for that, you use the report cards as indicators. They are not descriptors of your child's value. So you want to go to your child and you want to say something, and I'm talking teenagers here. So middle school, elementary school, all of them, everybody. You want to say something like, I love you because of who you are, not because of what you do. Your grades have nothing to do with my everlasting love for you. They're just tools that tell me what you haven't figured out yet. That's, Elizabeth, the word yet. I love the person you are, no matter what. Even when you make a mistake, or if you do something you shouldn't, or if you get mad at me, I will always love you. And then you reinforce that message every chance you get. You want to keep your eyes on the goal. The goal is to look at the process, not the grades. The grade is just a snapshot, a moment in time. The process is what you want to bring along and nurture. So you definitely want to examine the preparation that was put into whatever grade they received. And this goes for tests or projects. And then you want to look at the process that they do. You definitely do not want to be laying down blame or shame about the grades. There's nothing wrong with what they've done. It is a representation of where they are at. And the purpose of the report card is not to reveal a personality flaw. The purpose of the report card is so that you can learn through discussions with your kids. And when you have those discussions with your kids, you will be able to build success. So your job is to help your child, your teenager, learn about their inner ref so they can harness the inner ref and look at things objectively. That will decrease their anxiety. That will decrease the imposter syndrome. So if it's report cards time, then it's discussion time. That's all there is to it. It is time to talk. What you want to do is have your questions ready ahead of time. If you prepare your questions, and I'm going to give you a set right now, then you will be able to understand what is going on with your student. That understanding is power. So you find out, was there enough study time? You don't say, what grade did you get? You say, was there enough study time? What did you do that made you successful? If you could go back in time, what would you change? That's a really powerful question. What could be done to make it better for next time? How would you rate your understanding of the material? Notice that none of these talk about the grade. It is all about the process. This is analysis, and this is neutral, and this has no blame, no negativity. This is about reflection. So report cards are being brought home today. Before you look at the grades, before you allow them to share what they got, go over the 3-prong approach. You tell them, doesn't matter what your grades are, I love you no matter what. And you remind them, grades are information. This is a snapshot of where you are at this moment. Tomorrow, it will be a different snapshot. And there will be no guilt and no blame and no negative self-talk here. You are a great person, and I love you no matter what. And we are, as a team, moving you forward. So then you don't look. Yeah, that's right. You don't look at the report card. You're going to discuss the process first. So resist temptation to open that up and look at it, and resist their urging you to look at their grades. Discuss the process first. You can discuss the process afterwards, but you will lose the impact of it. Your job is to ask questions at this point. And then you listen to the answers. You don't offer advice. You don't say what it was like when you were young. You don't react in shock and horror. You don't offer opinions. You just listen. And when you listen, you will learn what's going on with your teenager. Your teenager will reveal to you their perspective, and you will hear what your teenager thinks he or she needs, not what you think they need. So here's some of the questions before you look at the grades. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you about this report card? Why? Which is the best subject for you? What do you do to make it work? Have them analyze this. Which is the most challenging subject for you? What do you do to make that work? What's the biggest difference between those two subjects? For next quarter, what can you do to make the challenging subject less challenging? Why don't we go through the subjects and you tell me what grade you want to get on the next report card for each one. And then once you've had that discussion, you can say, okay, now we're ready to look at your report card together. So what do? You look at the grades and you say, you know, we just looked at what grades you want to have next quarter. How do you think we can make that a reality? So again, we're not focused on the actual letter grades that they got. We're focused on the process. Once you've gone through that process, you can say to them, how did you feel about your report card before we talked? Now, how do you feel about it since we've talked? And then you will let them see that this helped de-escalate their emotions. You can use the same procedure for final exams, tests, and projects. So you can go back and look at things they've done already this quarter, or you can revisit last year's final exams, because this is the perfect time to talk about last year's final exams. Nothing is hanging in the balance here. And how do you have these discussions? You go and do something with your teenager. Put on some gardening gloves and go pull up some weeds. Fold laundry together. Make some food together. Go for a walk together. This physical being shoulder to shoulder with each other while you're having a casual conversation is a metaphor for the two of you facing forward and dealing with something together. So pick a time where things are neutral and calm and have these discussions. All right, so you have figured out you've harnessed your inner ref, and you have talked through the process with your teenager about how they are doing in school, and then you have looked at the grades. So what do you do now? If the report card is showing things are going well, then check in with your kids every 2 to 3 weeks with a similar conversations about the process and have them evaluate and share what's going on at that point. If your report card is showing that more support is needed, then check in with the school weekly or every other week until your child is showing that they're mastering the work. By the way, if your school uses grade portals, online, what do you call it? Grade books, then you can expect about a 2-week lag time between when work gets turned in and when it gets posted onto the internet, because teachers are swamped. They have so much they have to take care of. If you need to know whether or not something was turned in or accomplished or how progress is moving, then create your own little progress report. If you can take a snapshot of this, a screenshot of this, go ahead and you can use this for your own. But basically you send this to school with your student and have them hand it to the teacher at the end of the class and they fill it out for you. Also, I've been hearing that some schools are being really stringent about allowing kids to be in school if they sneeze or cough or exhibit symptoms that may be allergies or just a cold, and kids are missing school because of that. So this is a letter for a sample letter for requesting work for if the kids are out, but I've also coupled it with a little progress report questions in here. So again, you can take a screenshot of this and put it into your own words, or you can send me an email and I'll send you a version of it that you can edit. All right, let's talk about your classroom relationship. You need to have some type of relationship with all your students' teachers. And it could be something that's in depth or something that is at an arm's length, but you need to be connected with them. First thing you need to do is go introduce yourself to the teacher. Ideally, you do it at the beginning of the year, but we're smack in the middle of the school year right now. So if you have not yet introduced yourself to the teacher, go do it. What you want to do is ask for some feedback about your teenager's progress, and ask the teacher for suggestions about how you can support what's going on in the classroom. Also, many subjects have online versions of the textbook or the workbook, so ask the teacher if they've got that, and if they do, to send you the links. And if you end up being back home again with your students, get permission to record the online lessons. That will allow you to pace your student according to the way they learn. And this is a sample introduction letter that's for those of you who are so busy that you don't have time to sit and compose one. I get it. I was a mom and a teacher at the same time. So again, you can either take a screenshot or you can send me an email and I'll send you a version you can edit. Regardless of how you do this, you need to be transparent with your kids. You need to tell your kids, I'm going to go talk to your teacher, and make it like next week, because you want to give them enough time so they can get their ducks in a row. What you don't want to do is go do your conference with a teacher and then come back with a negative report, because your child will feel ambushed. And if you're going to follow up weekly or every other week, tell your student that you're going to be doing that, because that will allow them to say, "Ooh, I got to make sure nothing slips through the cracks." That kind of accountability works really well for teenagers. With all your efforts, you might find that you and the teacher and your teenager are having a hard time finding a solution to some issue. So I want to encourage you to reach out to your support team. You've got the guidance counselor, you've got the school psychologist, the vice principal, and the principal. All these people are vested in your child succeeding. And don't forget, like the school nurse, if there's health issues, club sponsors and coaches, the paraprofessionals, the advisors, the academic advisors, all these people are part of your support team. So reach out to them if you need them. That's what they're there for. All right, part 3, parent-teacher conferences. Every school has them. You know they're coming, so get ready for them. Some people believe that parent-teacher conferences should just be parents and teachers. and not include the student. I understand that and I respect that if that's the way people want to do that, because sometimes you have to have conversations that do not involve the student. I get that. I am a proponent for having the student present, however. So I do that because for me as a teacher, I get to see the interaction between the parents and the kids. For the parent, they get to see the interaction between the teacher and the kids. If any issues are raised, the student can ask about them right then. And then there's no chance of there being a miscommunication when one person is relating what the other person said later on. So I encourage you to have your students present. And if you need to talk about something privately with the teacher, you can always pick up the phone and call them later. All right, if you're going to do the parent-teacher conference, then you need to be ready. Here are some questions. Oh, and by the way, you can go online and look up getting ready for parent-teacher conferences, and they'll give you all kinds of information. But here are some great questions to ask. How are the assignments weighted? Have the teacher explain that to you. What is the grade based on? Which skills are the most important in order for my student to succeed in your class? Does my teenager turn work in on time and completed? What strengths do you see in my teenager? What weaknesses do you see in my teenager? How does my teenager participate in your class? This will give you a picture of what's going on in the classroom. And you should have your teenager, if your teenager is going to these meetings, you should have your teenager create their own set of questions. The other kind of conferences are for IEPs and 504 teams. I want to remind you that these teams are in place to support you and your student. If you have an issue, reach out to these people. They want things to work out. So they are the ones you should turn to. After any of these meetings, you should send a follow-up letter. You can take a screenshot of this one. But basically, you want to summarize what was covered in your discussion so that you make sure there's no miscommunication. And then you want to thank them for their time. And also throw in there that if there's anything else I can do to support your efforts, then let me know, because all teachers like to feel supported. One last thing here. It's report card day. Your child is coming home to share the report card with you, and they're emotional. It could be a positive emotion, it could be a negative emotion. But the bottom line is the opening of the report card is as big of a surprise to your kids as it is to you. Most kids do not know what the report card is going to tell them. They can't tell the difference between an A- and a B+. They don't know what they did to earn either of those. Why was it an A-? Why wasn't it a B+? Why wasn't it an A? They don't understand any of that. So they're just as surprised as you are. Your job is to be the inner ref so the report card doesn't take this this emotional roller coaster ride. You want them to be steady and to have their self-worth intact and for them to understand the process. Because if they understand their process, then they will be able to make changes to it and tweak it and hold on to the parts that are strong. So to summarize, report cards are tools. So they need to be treated like a tool. It is not more than that. It is not a reflection of who your kids are, and it is not a reflection of your parenting. You need to have frequent conversations with your teenagers. The more you talk to them about process and harnessing their inner ref, the easier it'll be for you to understand process and harness your inner ref. And it will keep your emotions, instead of going up and down like that in the roller coaster, they'll be just small bumps. And you want to stay in contact with the teachers. They are your support team for your teenager. And lastly, You want to celebrate and revel in your awesome adolescent. Look how far they've come already. They have learned so much from the day they were handed to you. And most of that is due to you. So don't question what you're doing as a parent. Harness your inner ref and say, I'm going to look at this process and see how to tweak it. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming today and listening. And if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at info@deborahanndavis.com. And also, as a bonus for being here today, you will be signed up. You'll get a copy of my monthly newsletter called Merry Meddling. And you are also entitled to a free parenting coaching session. So contact me on my website or through the email, and we will set that up. Thank you very much for coming.
All right, I think we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you. Welcome back. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce Clarissa Constantine. She is your go-to expert for everything having to do with test taking and test prep, like for tests like the SATs and the ACTs, and of course, final exams. So during her years at the University of Hartford in Connecticut, which is my backyard, she began what would turn into a decades-long career as a test prep coach. She's helped thousands of kids around the world navigate the college admissions process. She's joked that sometimes she finds herself playing the role of therapist more than tutor, helping the kids manage the stresses of life that naturally go along with test taking. But no matter how many young adults she has helped, she longed for a closer, more intimate relationship with her own mother. Unfortunately, that didn't happen before her mom passed away. So now Clarissa is driven to help other families avoid the heartache, the lost years, and the regret she experienced. In addition to being a test prep coach and dreaming of ways to enhance the parent-tween connection, she's also a certified life coach. She helps teens learn concepts like goal setting, self-compassion and self-esteem, mindfulness, and growth mindsets, which Elizabeth talked about. Please welcome the wonderful and impactful educator, Clarissa Constantine.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you for always making sure to pronounce my name correctly, because so many people look at it and say Constantine. And in fact, it is actually Constantine. So as we carry on, again, my focus largely in my professional experience has been with the later high school students, the juniors, the seniors, the college-bound kiddos. And honestly, even grad school bound college students. So I've worked with an array of kiddos between the ages of like 15 and 25. And I realized that so much of what Elizabeth and Deborah have already talked about is so key. It's not just about the grades. It's not just about the test scores. And yes, it's ironic from somebody who lives in a world of 400 to 1600 on the SAT or 1 to 36 on the ACT. One of the things that I see with students over the years is, or that I have seen, is that they get so obsessed not only with their grades, but with their test scores. And it's like 36 or bust, you know, or I'm never getting into college. I'm never going to have a successful career. I'm never going to this, that, or the other thing. And so I really want to come back, first of all, and talk about those two words that Elizabeth was mentioning, still and yet. I'm still working on that, or maybe I haven't gotten there yet. And one of the other things that I've found over the years is that a lot of our kids get so focused simply on college. We have a culture, particularly here in the US, where it's like, if you don't go to college, you're a failure. And so I want to work, first of all, to establish the fact that, yes, even though I live in that space, college isn't the only option for every kiddo. College isn't always the best option. Or going to college in the US straight out of high school isn't always the best option. I think at the end of the day, all of us who are in the proverbial village supporting kids, we want them to grow up to be happy, to be able to take care of themselves and their families, should they choose to have families. And so I really want to reiterate what Deborah was saying, that report cards are just one piece of the picture. I believe that especially once we get into this older high school, college bound process, one of the most important goals that you as a parent or as an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, again, one of those proverbial village members, one of the most important goals I'd encourage you to set for yourself is to continue to develop the relationship with your teenager. Yes, you're the parent. Yes, you're there to be their guide. But if you've got a junior, we're in October of junior year. In 2 years, they're already going to be off at college. So a lot of the foundations of academic success and goal setting, that kind of deal, has been set with your kiddos as early as late elementary into middle and early high school. Not saying you don't want to look at those things, but continuing to work on the mindset side of things with your older high school students, making sure that they feel empowered to drive their bus, as it were, but also some of the decisions that they're going to be presented with as they get into high school, or even middle school, early high school, later high school, and on into college, are going to be so much more life impacting than a report card. Conversations that sometimes are tough to have, you can start laying the groundwork for those in late elementary, middle, early high school. Again, it's not to say that there aren't any rules and that you should just be their friend. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying a lot of that's already been set. And what you can really do is work on establishing that consistency of relationship, that I love you no matter what your grades are. I love you even if you don't go to college straight away. Keep in mind that at this point, we're really working on developing kids who are going to be out of the nest in 2 years. If you came to any of our previous workshops, you know that Maya Angelou is one of my absolute favorite women of all time. And I think that sometimes as the adults in our teens' lives, we can forget that this statement is just as true for the kids in our world as it is for the rest of the people we interact with. People will forget what you said, but people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. One of the best things that you can do is ask a question, and as Elizabeth said, zip it. I don't think you used quite those words, Elizabeth, but give them the opportunity to formulate an answer. Do everything that you can so that they know that you're the trusted person they can come to when they get those tougher decisions about, sex and drugs and drinking and all of that jazz. So here's my question for you. What do jellyfish, dolphins, and helicopters all have in common? They are 3 different parenting styles as presented by Shimi Kang in her book called The Dolphin Way. Now, as we look at this, you can see there's kind of like left, right, middle of the road. The jellyfish is, I'm just trying to be your friend. I want to be your bestie. You don't have roles. You don't have goals. I don't hold any expectations of you. And what ends up happening is if this is our approach to parenting and guiding our youngsters, they kind of don't end up with a plan or a goal or any kind of focus as they get into adulthood. On the other end, we've got the helicopter parent. Perhaps we've heard this term. They're doing everything. They're filling out the college students or the college applications. They're giving the kids the time frames when they're going to be doing every aspect of their day. They don't actually role model how to take care of yourself because they're doing all of the taking care of for the student. So instead of being all the way to one side or all the way to the other, we want to aim, especially at this point, to adjust into the middle. If this has not been your habit, I very strongly encourage you to adjust into this middle realm. So for example, with the role modeling, purposeful use of role modeling for collaboration, a balanced lifestyle, and core character values. I know that I'm one who's always working to demonstrate a balanced lifestyle. I do have workaholic tendencies. And I believe that some of those workaholic tendencies came from the fact that I was the product of a family where grades were where it was at. When I graduated high school, I was 7th in my class. Freshman year, I was first in my class. And my mother, well-intentioned though she may have been, asked me, when I graduated seventh, she's like, well, that's good, but why weren't you first? Because somehow first wasn't good enough. So I have fallen into this pattern of work, 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 because I always was judged on results. I never learned that process basis that Elizabeth and Deborah have talked about. So especially as we go into high school, but particularly these later couple of years, I really encourage adults to take on more of a mentorship role with their kiddos rather than the nagger, okay? Because they've got to learn how to figure this out on their own ultimately. Ideally, if you were able to join us for our third workshop this summer, or this year that happened over the summer, you set some goals with your kiddos. If you didn't, it's not too late. But if you did set those goals, as Elizabeth and Deborah have mentioned already, you want to take the time and sit down and be like, okay, how's it working out for you? And if it's not working out for you, how do you think we could change it? And if you get the inevitable, well, I don't know how to change it, right? I would defer to what Elizabeth professes, which is, well, if you did know, what might you say? Or, well, what if it was your friend who was experiencing this kind of a challenge? How might your friend respond to this? Take a look at study habits. Take a look at time with friends. Take a look at time with work. This is an aspect like a part-time job. This is something that typically doesn't arise until 10th, 11th grade, depending upon how old your kiddo is. In most states, they can't start working until they're 15 or 16. And here's the deal. Having a part-time job teaches kids a huge amount of life skills, or a huge variety of life skills that I would argue in some ways are more important than grades. It teaches them pride in a job well done that isn't numeric, that isn't grade-based. It teaches them to work on a team, especially if you have a kiddo who maybe isn't as athletic or isn't in the band or the orchestra or chorus, where they don't participate in a team activity. Being in a job can be part of an experience of being on a team activity. It also teaches them about different kinds of expectations that an employer is going to have that a teacher isn't necessarily going to present. So it's a different aspect of things that comes up this time of year. Looking at grades or the report cards, like back to what Deborah and Elizabeth were saying, going, hey, well, who do you need to talk to? What teacher do you need to go ask for support? Do you need a tutor? Do you need outside help? Is there, maybe they just, we all hear those stories about, like, particularly it seems like in math, well, they just had a bad math teacher or a bad geometry teacher. And I don't really like the term bad. I think more that it's a personality disconnect often, but we need to help our students recognize, look, you're going to engage with people that you don't like in the real world. Let's use this as an example of how to do that. So one of the things that was really helpful with kids of this age is helping them role model or helping them practice out loud how they can have some of these more challenging conversations. I'm not a fan, when your kids are juniors or seniors, of you taking the lead in these conversations. This really needs to be your students' responsibility. They're driving the bus. But that also doesn't mean that they necessarily know how to have these conversations. So I want to take a step back for just a second, and I want to take a look at some of the goals that you can set with your kiddos that aren't just grade-based. All right, let's talk about another skill that they might want to learn. Maybe they want to learn how to sew. Maybe they want to learn how to bowl. I personally love going bowling. It's nice to be able to throw a 12-pound ball at things and get my aggression out. And I want to be a better bowler because I want to have fun when I go doing it, when I go out to bowl. What other hobbies do they have? Are they looking at learning to drive? What's the time frame for them being able to do that? Again, going to a part-time job, being able to have some of their own money. And you may be in a situation as the parents where you're like, I don't want my kids working. I don't want them focusing on school or on focusing on anything other than school. It's my job as their parent to provide for them financially. And I completely respect that. I do want to encourage you to consider, though, that there is something to be said for a student, again, learning some of the balance, but also earning their own money, giving themselves a sense of agency in the process. And, maybe you look at having them save up for a car instead of you completely buying it for them. There is something to be said for the idea that if we earn something ourselves, we often tend to take better care of it. So maybe they put in 50% and you put in 50%, or the agreement is that you purchase the vehicle, but then they're responsible for the car insurance because, oh, by the way, car insurance isn't exactly cheap. Maybe you can set some goals with them about going out and exercising. If you set a goal and you say, hey, I'm going to help you manage your goals for school, but I could really use your help overseeing my fitness goals or overseeing my hobby goal with something like that, then that also gives them the opportunity to play in the mentor space. And these, by the way, these, you can see the reference that I have here from a blogger whose blog is Tailoring the Good Life. She's actually an organizer. And Deborah, Elizabeth, and I were talking about organization early on before we actually started the recording about like having systems, having organized spaces, organized processes can help students. So I liked a lot of what this gal had to say. And here's the thing. This goes right back to what Elizabeth was talking about relative to a growth mindset. Maya Angelou said, do the best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. My only issue is that I believe that using the terms better and best implies judgment. And so my variation is do what you know, or do what you can rather, until you know differently. Then when you know differently, do different. So this, again, we're all works in progress. And I think a lot of us as adults, we come into interacting with our teenagers like we have it all figured out. And the reality is that we don't. So if we show our kiddos, we model the idea of like, look, I'm working on this as well. I'm working on improving my time on my next 5K or my next half marathon. And we show them these are this is my training pattern. This is my training schedule. And we allow them to help us. Then that shows them how they can later go mentor other people. I forget who it was that said earlier, how are you making your classmates feel safe and welcomed? How can you mentor them? Sometimes that's the case as well. So by modeling that for them, it gives them a chance to step up as well. Now, dialogue. This is important, not only in terms of your relationship with your kiddos, but again, modeling for them how to have open dialogue with other people. We don't necessarily teach our kids how to communicate well, especially if we come into a very authoritative or authoritarian rather perspective with them. I'm the adult and I said so. How many times I heard my mom say, because I said so, and that was just the end of story. There was no dialogue, there was no conversation. And frankly, it left me feeling shut down and like my value didn't matter. My opinion didn't matter. So we want to help them learn how to have effective dialogue, not only with, between the parents and the teens, but also between the teens and their teachers, right? So Elizabeth and Deborah were talking about like, well, maybe you need to go talk to your teacher. Okay, great. But what do you say when you walk in? Is it just like mumble, mumble? This is where some of that role playing can be really helpful. So for example, teach your kiddo to ask for a time to discuss XYZ. So Mrs. Stitt, I need help with learning how to memorize this poem. When can I have 10 minutes of your time, please? So let me give you a little insight on that. Number one, it's being clear about what I need help with. If we don't model this, this turns into the inevitable, we need to talk, which never goes well in a relationship. It says, this is the topic I would like to discuss. And it sets the expectation that we don't have to have the conversation right now, but that we need to have it. And when is it a convenient time to have it? So this is something that we can model with our kiddos. Hey, Bobby, when you get your report card, we're going to have dinner. And then after dinner, we're going to review the report card together. Now, in that case, as a parent, you're saying this is what we're going to do, but you're still giving them a time frame so that they can prepare for the conversation and have a chance to pull their thoughts together. Same thing goes with interacting with their coaches or interacting with their bosses if they have a part-time job. So the second thing that I think it was Elizabeth discussed is we want to give them the opportunity to understand that if we keep the conversation in I language, it's going to be a whole lot more effective. I feel, I'm struggling with, I don't understand this yet. I'm still having challenge with, as opposed to you suck, you did, you said, blah, 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 blah. That does not encourage successful conversation. Encourage your student to take notes on the points that they want to address. I've even done this when I've had to have a serious conversation with a family member or with my husband. Here are the 3 things that I need to talk about, and here are my emotions, because I tend to shut down when I get into a more emotional conversation. And so that's a coping skill I've learned. And again, you can potentially role play with them so that they get comfortable with the words coming out of their own mouths. Humans are not born negotiators. We are not born conflict resolvers. These are skills that we can learn. So modeling that and helping them prepare for those kinds of conversations is really important. I'm also a big fan of paired journals. This is between an adult and a teenager. They're a single book, a single journal where you can write to each other. This helps channel our inner ref, as Deborah was talking about, where it allows us to receive information and process it before we have to be face to face with somebody else. So imagine, Elizabeth or Deborah was saying that sometimes the report cards are just as shocking to the parents or to the kids as they are to the parents. Sometimes writing it out and then giving it to the other person and giving the other person space to process it before they have to respond can increase and improve communication and connection significantly. So the Open the Door journal is actually a journal that I've created. It is available for digital download on my website. We are also going to print with it here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll have hard copies that are available for the holidays if you're interested. Ask questions, and then listen. Elizabeth mentioned earlier, ask a question, give them space to come up with the answer. That doesn't change. One of the biggest challenges that I see between parents and teenagers, particularly the older teenagers in the college-bound group, their bodies are almost fully formed. Their brains aren't even close. And so we look at this creature that looks like an almost adult, and we forget that their brain is lagging behind the body. The brain doesn't actually fully develop until mid to late 20s. So when we're engaging with them and we're asking them something, we're expecting responses based on what their outside looks like. And we have to remember that the inside hasn't caught up yet. So that space that she invited you to offer is critical. It's also really valuable to ask the student, when you ask, hey, what's bothering you? What's on your mind? Before you just jump into giving advice, ask them, do you need an ear? Or are you looking for an answer? And frankly, this can really work well in your marital relationships as well, or your adult relationships. Sometimes I just need to vent. I don't want somebody else fixing my problems. I don't want them getting in the middle of it. I just need to get it out because I process things verbally. And my husband, God love him, steps in and tries to fix things. And sometimes I'm like, shut up and listen to me. Our kids feel the same way. So give them the space and ask them, do you need an ear or do you need an answer? Ways that you can do this if you just feel this compulsion to respond. Ask, oh yeah? What do you mean by that? Tell me more. Or you can even go a step further and say, do you mean to say, and then put a summary in. And that way it reflects back to them that maybe they didn't actually say what they meant, but that's what you received. So it gives them another opportunity to clarify. All right, let's talk timelines and timeliness for college. If your kiddo is college bound, there are absolutely timelines that you need to pay attention to. So this is a bit of a redux because it never hurts to say it 2 or 3 or 4 times. These are, this actually is a repeat of what we talked about in our 3rd workshop of just some big picture, quarter by quarter things to pay attention to with kids as early as junior year. So for those of you who have kiddos who are younger than juniors, just so that you know, 9th and 10th grade grades absolutely do matter for college admissions. Once we get to, there's my reminder time-wise. Once we get to junior year though, like end of sophomore year, that's when we really need to be thinking about putting action into place for the college admissions process. That's the earliest that I recommend that you do SAT or ACT prep. And here's what I want you to understand. Like, again, the fall of junior year, fall of senior year, not overly different, but fall of senior year is when college applications really do start becoming real. If you're planning for your kiddo to take SAT or ACT, these are the current dates based on 2021, 2022 calendars. And as a general rule of thumb, you want to be aiming to have your kiddos' college applications submitted no later than Thanksgiving of their senior year. So with all of that, here's what I want you to keep in mind. Yes, grades are a piece of the puzzle, 100%. So are jobs, so are volunteering, so are their extracurricular activities. Colleges do not want exclusively scholarly students. They want students who also have taken the time to explore, to learn about themselves. And oh, by the way, they want students who can pay attention to deadlines. Deadlines are hard deadlines. When it comes to registering for the exams, when it comes to submitting applications, 100% deadlines count. So you've got to pay attention to the timelines. And this is really an opportunity to guide, to mentor, to coach your kiddo in the project planning process. So sit down and go, hey, if we're aiming to take the SAT on X date, we need to work backwards, and we need to be thinking of like in advance of when we need to be taking a practice test, when we need to be looking for a professional, those kinds of things. So this is something that is even more important. It has much higher stakes, negative outcomes if we don't coach our kids well here. All right. Again, I recommend setting appointments, as the other ladies have mentioned, set times every week, every couple of weeks, that are just focused on the college admissions process to help make sure that we're staying on top of things. Because, man, I have absolutely seen kids not get accepted because they missed a deadline or miss out on scholarships that I was confident they would have qualified for when they didn't hit the deadline. Last bit I want to offer to you is, please don't be afraid to bring in professional support. As an adult, as somebody who manages your home, or as somebody who works in a professional space, you do not live in isolation. You have other people that you hire to do things for you. Whether it's you hire a professional to come in and clean your house, whether it's you hire a professional to build you a new home, whether it's you hire an auto broker to help you buy a new car. There are professionals like Deborah and Elizabeth and me who are here specifically to help you. Reach out to financial planners who can help you with the financial side of college. If your kid starts a job, get them in with a financial planner immediately so that they can start investing. If you are looking for support on the college admissions side, or tutoring, or an IEP advocate, for example, to help you navigate and know what questions to ask, hire them. This is part of what I do at Parent Tween Connection, is I pull together some of those professionals. The last thing I want to mention that is really important as your kids head on to college. According to the letter of the law in this country, 18 years old signifies legal adult. And there are some very important legal things that you need to pay attention to. Please be clear, I am not an attorney. This is not meant to be a legal advice. You need to speak with an attorney when your kid is approaching 18 to discuss two really important things. Number one, a medical power of attorney. God forbid something were to happen to your child once they're off at college. Because of HIPAA laws, medical professionals cannot necessarily call you directly. Same thing with financial power of attorney. If your kid has bills and they become incapacitated, however, temporarily or not, in order for a bank to be able to grant you access to their accounts, you do have to have a financial power of attorney. So please do reach out to an attorney in your state for that. Lastly, college grades. Yes, they're your kid. Yes, you may be paying tuition. No, you don't get to see their grades. That is a law, and you would be amazed at how many parents are shocked by that. So that is a conversation you need to have with your kiddo before they head off to college, to be like, hey, there is a form that the registrar or the bursar, not the bursar, somebody in the college, it can vary from location to location or school to school, but there is a form that your child can fill out that allows you access to their grades if they choose to let you see them. But remember, according to the law in this country, if they are 18, they do not have to grant you that privilege. So the more you focus on the relationship now, the less likely you're going to be that your kid says, peace out, I'm never going to share my grades with you again because it's been such a traumatic experience, or whatever the case may be. And the more you focus on the relationship and establishing that you're here to guide them, the more likely you're going to be that they continue to come to you for that guidance as they get older. With that, whoop, I went the wrong way. If you are interested, I have a few episodes of our podcast that were launched earlier this summer. We've got more coming. If you would like a copy of our Foundations of Connection, which is the core of my signature coaching program myself, you can download that on our website. And Parent Tween University meets the second Sunday of each month. If you are interested, my special offer for you is 50% off for 3 months. Our next meeting is November 14th. And with that, I'm going to say, oh, I forgot to update your offer here, Elizabeth, on the CAPE program. I will update that in the follow-up email that I send out. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and kill the recording, say thank you for joining us, and open it up to any questions for folks who are here with us live.
Do we not want to have the discussions
Oh, yeah, we can.
as part of the recording?
no
I
problem.
think parents would really like to hear the open discussion among us.
Sure.
And Urmila, if you have a question, for sure, we should start with your question. And any perspective that you want to give, you are welcome to give. We are totally open to hearing how things are feeling at your house. We, after all, we don't have adolescents at our house anymore, and so it's always good for us to check in with parents who do.
So I guess do have one question, but I did have one perspective. Is I don't know about other schools, but in our area, kids do know what they're getting in their report cards because they are actually being asked to check their online portal every week. And so they are very well aware of, and we actually have to sign off that's my school, but I do know other schools in the area also have their kids check the online portal pretty regularly, but our school has the kids get signatures from parents every week saying that they have looked at the grades every week. So there are no surprises, which I personally like. I mean, my kid, again, like I said, does not have any issues, but for parents whose kids do have, maybe falling behind or whatever, there are no questions of surprises. So I don't know if it's a new thing, it's a Bay Area thing, I don't know, but I do know that.
It could also be a middle school, high school thing, because you said
yeah, it's definitely a middle school thing. No, but I was referencing the fact that somebody said that it's a surprise to the kid, right? And it's not, at least not in our area. It's never a surprise.
That is wonderful, because then that gives them some power. That really is wonderful.
Yeah, so that way the kids can, if you're falling behind, you realize there's a pattern in 2-3 weeks, you can then sort of try to fix whatever is going wrong.
Exactly. The accountability is fabulous.
Yeah. I guess my question is, as a parent of a child who's going into high school in 8 months, and she's excelling in every subject. She does swim and all that is not that great, but she does it as diligently as she can, but she's an excellent academic student. And we've talked growth mindset till it's coming out of her. She's tired of hearing of it. So I guess my question is how best to make sure that I support her. I worry sometimes that she does too much. I know my husband definitely worries about it. She's very interested in a variety of things, and she has many interests, and she does them all really diligently, and she mostly excels at everything. So how do we, I guess, support her in a way that helps her excel while not doing too much?
Can I field this one. I would say from wherever you are right now, say this is the line. You know, right now you're doing everything fine and you're handling everything okay, fine. So we don't cross this line. This is the line. So if you want to add something else to it, you have to remove something that's already on your plate. So because you're coming up on the holiday season, right? We're doing, what do you call it? Halloween and Thanksgiving, and then the Christmas holidays and all those things. And so no matter what it is that you celebrate, there are going to be things going on like school recitals and concerts and right. So all those things are going to get added to her plate. And she will, the way kids are, the way we all are, she'll want to embrace them all and say, yeah, oh, I can do that too. So have the conversation with her now about if you had a recital this week, how would you be able to fit it in with all your studying you have to do? If you had a concert you wanted to go to or a dance you want to go to or whatever, how would you be able to fit it in right now? So you have the conversations while nothing matters. And then let her work through it and let her picture it. And if she says, oh, I just know I'd be able to do it. So you say, that's great, but can you explain it in a way that I'll understand? And you don't have to tell me now. You can think about it and then tell me tomorrow if you want.
I would add to that is she, I mean, she's being successful and she's doing all these things. Is she also waking up energized, having had enough sleep? Is she pleasant? Give her, to take, right?
I don't think she's getting enough sleep personally, but she says she's fine and she's very pleasant. And, in school, she has a reputation of being a very helpful person who, helps other students who are not doing so well with their work. And
is there any tension about like Deborah said, like if you decided that, oh, it's a beautiful day and the whales are off the coast and we're going to, we're going to spend all day Saturday. We're going to go to Monterey and we're going to see the whales and, have lunch. And would that cause extreme anxiety because her schedule is so packed that she doesn't have the ease or the space to take advantage of something like that?
To be honest, my schedule is so packed that I wouldn't be able to do something like that. But I mean, we were talking about vacation yesterday and I said, we'll take 2 weeks off and go somewhere. And she was very thrilled by the idea. She didn't seem to have any anxiety. So I think it's more me bringing this timing to not do something.
Well, and what I would add, again, with my background having been, as you said, the academic superstar or whatever it was, however you referred to her as well, that I learned to pack. I was that kid that Deborah was like, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. And I kept adding because that's how I got the validation. So thank you so much for the work that you're already doing with her as far as the growth mindset and looking on, the process side of things, not just the end result of things. I actually also have a background as a personal trainer and my husband is a sports performance coach. So there's an aspect of this, of the body awareness that I like to bring in. I can say, speaking as somebody, I'm a test prep coach, for crying out loud. If there's anyone here that's like, yep, I'm a nerd, I'm an academic, it's me. I identify with my brain. I don't identify as much with my body as an athlete or as a dancer or just as somebody who can sit and be. I would encourage you to, number one, ask her, what does she enjoy the most? And first of all, watch the behavior changes, like the other gal said. If she seems like her normal self, let it be, but pay attention to those behavior changes. And like Deborah said, if she wants to add something, okay, what's going to give? Something's got to give. Because otherwise she's going to end up like another student of mine who is in her 30s, worked a high-powered paralegal job, is married, had a 20-month-old, and then found like was trying to prepare for the LSAT for law school admissions, and then found out she's pregnant with baby number 2 at the same time, and they're trying to get approved for a mortgage and move. And I literally had the conversation with this woman. She is 35 years old, and I was like, Meredith, something needs to give. So I like the something's got to go in order for something to come in. Maybe even, look at a calendar and be like, okay, what's your homework taking you every day? How much homework do you have? What does dance cost? How much is dance time? How much is music time? How much is whatever time? And plan in downtime for her and you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, because you're modeling that behavior for her.
Yeah. And when we model that, we make adulthood not look like very much fun. And if adulthood looks like a slog, right? It's one thing to say, yes, you've got to work hard and be disciplined now and play the get into college game, but you are going to love college and you're going to love life. But if she's looking to you and you are just busy, exhausted, with no wiggle room, no space for yourself, for your own development.
And I'm also a big fan. One of the things that I recommend to the families I work with is plan mother-daughter dates or daddy-daughter dates so that it's something fun to look forward to. Number one, it sounds like you personally could use some downtime. And I say that because I'm the pot calling the kettle black, my friend. Okay. But that's also why I planned dinner last night with myself, 2 of my girlfriends and their husbands. We went on a triple date last night and I was like, I need downtime. If I don't do that, I will order in and sit in front of my computer watching television on a Friday night. And I'm going bowling tonight with some of my business associates, but I'm going bowling and I'm going to go have fun, right? And I'm intentionally planning some fun time. So number one, it's modeling downtime. The second thing, though, is I really like Deborah's analogy or her explanation that time when you're out for a hike, for example, and you're shoulder to shoulder with your kiddo, or she uses the example of sitting on her front porch painting her toenails with her daughter.
That's what I used to do.
It's not confrontational. It's not face to face. So it takes away that potential confrontational aspect of things. I love the analogy of like, this is us shoulder to shoulder. We can take on anything. But if you set those times once a month with each of your kiddos, then they know my time with mom is coming up. My time with dad is coming up. And if you also establish that, hey, this is our time, just us, there is no topic that is barred, then they will start to know that not that other times aren't, that you're not available, but that is their sacred time. And the other thing that I would say in that, your 13-year-old is in adolescence. She's likely, I didn't even ask if it's a son, daughter, or whatever, but
My daughter.
Your daughter. Okay. You know what? She's going through some pretty significant physical changes, and she's going to be hearing about things at school that you may or may not be ready for her to be talking about. But the fact of the matter is they're talking about it. They're talking about sex. They're talking about self-harm.
We've been discussing that very. Actually, I do have to clarify. When I say I can't take a day off like that, is it has to be planned for me. I have lots of planned, like I have today family friends coming over. I have family mates and all of those things. We have a camping trip planned with her Girl Scout troop and my younger daughter's Girl Scout troop. So I have all those things planned. I do planned take time off, but I'm so great with unplanned stuff because my days are usually planned. Even my weekends are planned.
I'm the same way. And you know what? I just heard from a coach a couple of weeks ago, actually, Elizabeth, at the Polka Dot Powerhouse celebration. Plan 3 days a month that are just free. And like hold those sacred, whether it's for you to be like, I'm just gonna go to the beach for the day, or I'm gonna stay in my jammies with a cup of cocoa, or like, and maybe 3 right now. Like for me, oh my God, 3 was way too overwhelming. But I was like, you know what? I think I could do a Friday morning.
I can do 1.
Right? But you know what? Like you do a half a day and you're like, okay, the world didn't explode. Then you go to like 2 half days.
Is that if you absolutely block out your calendar so you can't say yes to anything else, at the very least, you have a day to handle some of those last minute things.
Right.
As a teacher, one of the things that I learned, I was always trying to optimize my time on task with my kids. And so, I just kept going. And eventually I learned, like, no, like at the end of every unit, we essentially need to have a day where I don't have any teaching objective,
Mhm.
because I'm going to get behind, or there's going to be a fire drill, or there's going to be a something. And I need that day to just play catch up. And if in fact everything is on board, we might just have like this really low key day where we're just doing a check in, or, I'm saying, we're going to check in for 20 minutes, and then you guys have the rest of the time to work on whatever you want to work on.
Mhm.
And I felt a little bit guilty about, like, oh, but that's, that's part of the time on task. Those are part of the minutes I'm supposed to be giving instruction. But it made such a difference psychologically to know that I had given myself that buffer. And very often what it was that, Urmila's daughter was off doing nothing because she had done everything. But it was giving me some one-on-one time with some kiddos who needed the support.
Mhm. It's almost like it's, a financial advisor would tell us that we need to have a stash of money for emergencies, with the unexpected $1,000 car bill or whatever, right? It's that same idea, but it's with time as opposed
Yeah.
to money.
It's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. And I'm also a high school teacher, and I know exactly
Oh
what
my
you
gosh.
Yeah.
So
you get
then
it.
the other thing is, don't schedule those free days now. Go schedule them for January and February and March and April and May, when the calendar is open. Put it on your calendar now for the
Mm.
future. Don't add pressure to yourself like, oh, I got to take care of everything else and I got to put a free day in there. How am I going to get that in there? Yeah, don't put it
That is a
your
great
3 days when your calendar is empty, and then easier when you get there, they'll be there for you already.
Yeah.
No, and even visually, as I look at my calendar, when I see that there's a chunk of time that's open, they're so like,
Oh no, I gotta fill it. I have to put something on there that colors the whole day that says, don't schedule anything. If it's empty, I'll populate it. So I have to put something in there that says, don't schedule anything from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Well, and I think this comes back to your initial question is like, how do I know when it's too much? What are the things that as an adult that you could do differently that would do well for your mental and physical health? Start modeling it for doing it yourself. And you know what I find is that's why I started scheduling the fun time, because I know I'll keep the commitment to other people. Sometimes I'm not so good at keeping it to myself. But if you look at it as I am doing this because this is a life skill that I want my kids to mimic, there's your external reason. If you struggle to do it for yourself, start doing those pieces so that they start seeing it because they're watching you. Even your 9-year-old is watching.
Oh yeah.
I just want to offer one last perspective, and that is, for foreign-born parents, knowing and trusting that the university college path is different, right? I mean, it sounds like your older daughter is so on track. That she'll probably stay on track. But what if she doesn't? Let's just say that she hits the wall and, something happens, or, the things that we don't account for, like, she gets her heart broken, and that completely throws her off track for a while. And so she has a semester that doesn't look the way that everything else has looked. The pathway from high school into college in the United States is so much more forgiving than other pathways, right? It's so much more flexible.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that if that's not the system you've grown up in, to really understand what are the pathways and what are the ways to make things up, and that it doesn't have to be the
Right.
straight line. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is one place where I will absolutely give the American school system credit.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've been here for 22 years now, and I've been teaching high schoolers for most of those 22 years. Plus, I was at grad school here, so, and help many high schoolers go to college. So I'm not really worried about
Good.
those things.
I was going to say you have a better handle on that because of the nature of your profession than many other
Than most people.
international
Yeah.
parents are going to feel equipped.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm not worried about that. I think I have no real worries in terms of her right now, at least. It's just more that I do like I feel like she could do so much, and I just want to make sure that I don't fail my part.
Well, and that's where I come back to the relationship and the encouragement to be her.
Right.
Is so key, because you know what, whether we're talking education, like as human beings, none of us walks the same pathway.
Right.
And I have to believe that there's an aspect of resiliency in each of us that, you know what, even if our parents, and I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? Like that, we could say coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I look at it, and I'm like, okay, I recognize that, no, I didn't have the most stellar relationship with my mom. I never was one who could be like, I could send all those sappy, lovey, mom, you're the reason I am today cards. The reality is that I am the person I am today because of who my mom was. Was it the relationship that I know that Deborah has with her daughter? No, but it still made me who I am, and it is driving me in my life's purpose. So keep in mind that, like, yes, you are an integral part of your kids' long-term success, and so are they.
Yeah.
Right.
So, just like Deborah was saying, good grades doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good parent. Bad grades doesn't mean that you're a bad parent, and honestly, there's so much judgment among a lot of parents. I think especially a lot of moms. I mean, we're damned if we stay home with our kids when they're little, and we're damned if we don't. We're damned if we breastfeed, we're damned if we don't. You know what I mean? So like, there's no escaping the judgment. At the end of the day, you can only do what you believe is in your kid's best interest and your own best interest now, and pray hard.
There you go. Let's take a look at the slide that we had with our other questions and just double check that we have addressed them.
I do want to say one more thing, that we have 3 other episodes of this, and you would be well served to check them out. One of them is rocking the back to school process, and the other one is about optimizing the summer and those kinds of things. So you definitely should tune into those.
I think I attended at least one of them, if not both.
Cool.
Very good.
I also had one last question about my 9-year-old. I feel like a lot of times she compares herself to her older sister, and she's doing really fine academic. I mean, she's in elementary school, so grades don't matter, but she's doing great, and she's herself, and I don't want her to be anything but herself. But I think she compares herself, and I don't know how to avoid that. How to, I keep saying it's, each person is a unique person. You have your unique skills, your unique strengths, and your unique weaknesses. And you're fabulous the way you are, but I just want to make sure that if there's anything else I can do to help her not do that.
Do they learn the same way?
Not really, no.
Okay, so they're going to be different creatures, and your little one is going to think the ideal creature is the one that her big sister is.
Right.
So again, I was mentioning our past episodes of this. One of them, I believe it was the first one that we did, where I covered learning styles.
Yes.
And there's a test there that you can take. So have everybody in your family take the learning styles quiz, so that you can say, how are we different from each other? And then you'll say, ooh, this is what you're good at. You'll be able to pinpoint her learning strengths and the things that she's good at, and emphasize that, and say, your sister can learn how to do this stuff, but this is going to come natural to you.
The other thing that I would be so curious to ask her and just say, what are you telling yourself about that?
Mm.
right? So like, oh, my big sister, she's better at this. She's always doing this. She's always doing that. So what are you telling yourself about that? What does that mean to you? And try to get at some of what's the fear underneath. Like, does it mean I won't go to college? Does it mean I won't be successful? Does it mean you won't love me as much?
Mhm.
And in our own minds, if we're going like, of course we love you as much, but kids, I don't know. I used to ask my
Manage the
seventh graders,
standard.
all the time. I used to say, do your parents love you? Do your parents love you because you get good grades? And I would get an answer back from seventh graders that would be like, well, they love us more when we get good grades. And they really, really believed it, right? It was like they understood that their parents were supposed to love them and that was like a basic requirement of parenting. But they really did feel that they love us more when we're getting good grades.
Well, and I think part of that is because as a society, we have established that grades are the metric. And we have established that a good job and a good salary are the metric by which success is evaluated. And so I think part of that is considering, how much of that is true in your family and, bringing in other things like, that can be, metrics, but are more perhaps qualitative. Like, hey, how much time did you spend having fun this week? How much time did you spend in your devotion to God or, whatever house of worship you're a part of, if any, or meditation or mindfulness, like other things, like if your focus, and it's likely that this is the case because you're a teacher, right? If your primary focus is academic, or like for me is test prep, or like the SAT, ACT scores, then that's what they're going to think that is important to you. And if you can look with other those things, that, and you probably do, but, continuing to emphasize that. The other thing that do you know Brene Brown?
Yeah.
So one of the things that she talks about in Rising Strong is, to Elizabeth's point, is the story I'm telling myself is.
Mm.
And she tells a story about how she and her husband were out at a cabin on a lake, and they were both former Division I swimmers, and they went out to swim across the lagoon and back. And halfway across, they paused for a rest or something, and she just had this immense feeling of love and devotion for him. And she said something and tried to connect, and he was like, "Yep, good, water temperature's great," and just kept on swimming. And she was like, "What?" Like, I just tried to have this like emotional intimacy, and you were like, "Peace out, keep going." Well, what ended up happening was that he had a nightmare the night before about his kids being hurt in the water or some such. And so his focus was, I'm just swimming. I'm counting my strokes and I'm just swimming. I'm swimming. I'm swimming. I'm not listening. I'm not registering. But the story for her was, he doesn't love me. He thinks I'm fat in this suit. He thinks I'm ugly, like all the things, right? Like, I don't have my Division I swimmer's body. And I think women are particularly good about it.
Mm-hmm.
More than I think than some men tend to. And she stopped and she's like, okay, the story I'm telling myself is. And when they got out of the water, before they even got off the dock, she's like, okay, dude, we need to stop. He's like, what's going on? She's like, I had this moment. I tried to engage with you. You just kept going. And he's like, dude, I was having a panic attack. And she's like, oh, it's not about me at all. So that's part of what I coach families with, is like, the story I'm telling myself is. And the other person usually looks at you and goes, what? Like, you're on crack. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
So
I do emphasize, even though I am a teacher, or rather because I'm a teacher, I do emphasize process a lot more. I keep telling them that I don't even care if you get an A, but if you didn't have to put in any work to get that A, then it doesn't mean anything, right? Because it came easy to you, it's meaningless. Because I teach calculus. So I know that as you go on in any subject, doesn't matter what it is, you have to learn to put in work, right? So the process is far more important. If you haven't learned to put in work in lower grades, you're actually at a disadvantage. You're not smart and therefore advantaged. It's just that it came intuitively to you, and you're going to be at a disadvantage by the time you get to high school, because I see all those students struggling because they've never learned to put in work. I don't care how smart you are, calculus is a lot of work.
Yep.
It is.
Tell this to my kids all the time. If it is too easy for you, you need to look for harder problems or more difficult essays to write or whatever it is, because you need to learn. I much prefer a B or a C that you put in a lot of work in,
Mhm,
because then you learned the process of what your teacher is trying to get you to learn.
mhm.
So, I mean, I definitely emphasize process a lot, but I think with my younger one, I see her skills all. I mean, she's a fabulous soccer player, and she talks about how she's going to be in the US women's soccer team, and we, encouraging her on that and all of those things. But yeah, there is definitely when it comes to academics, there are times she makes comments like, "Oh, I'm not like big sister."
So here's a question. Did your older one play soccer?
She did. She was very bad at it.
Okay, so the thing is that to compare them at 9, you say, when she was 9, this is what she did. It's hard for you to understand because you see her grown. When you are there, you'll be fabulous just like she is. But right now, you're at the 9-year-old stage, and you have to go through, do quick math here, you have to go through 4 years before you get to where she is. So look at how fabulous you are right now.
Right. And what I also say to her is, maybe you'll not be the same as what she is, but that's fine.
You should say to her, I hope you're not the same as what she is. It would be so boring in our house for you guys to be the same.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'd rather not have carbon copies. So,
yes.
It also strikes me, and to be fair, I'm an only child, so I never experienced this on either end of that experience. If you see this persist, especially as even now in elementary school, if she has the same teachers that your older child had,
some of them, yeah,
it may be worthwhile, just like a little note to the teachers, like, hey, FYI, child number 2, like younger child, already has a tendency to compare herself to her older sister. Would you help us out and try not to make comparisons? I mean, there's an aspect where, like, if I know what's that?
Not even mention it. Oh, I had your sister. No.
Like I have that situation right now. I'm working with a younger sibling of a younger sister of an older brother. And when I first talked to the parent, I was like, okay, are we talking Tyler 2.0? He was like, oh God, no. But I asked the parent that, and completely different. And frankly, the second child is, again, very, very different, much more academically inclined. But I think because school has come easier to her, she doesn't work quite as hard in the same way, And so it was good for me to know that she has a completely different personality. And occasionally I'll mention, oh yeah, your brother, like, it took him a while to get there. Like, maybe it'll take you that, maybe it won't. But it's important to me to recognize, hey, this is not the same kid, And so especially if I know that going into it, and I'm sure you're the same, if I know that the younger one is going to have that comparative complex, as it were, I'm going to take extra steps not to even mention it. So that could be a good short email.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna keep us a little bit on focus, on point here, because we know that people won't listen ad nauseum. So, do we feel? How do I keep my daughter from feeling bad about low grades?
I think that was pretty much covered when I was discussing talk about process. Don't even look at the grades. Talk about the process. Work through what's working and what isn't, then make some goals about what you'd like to see in the report card next time, and then look at the grades and say, how do we make this a reality?
I think it's really valuable to make sure that we don't let our kids, or as much as we can, don't let them get in the habit of comparing their grades to other friends. I always say, like, in the test prep world, your scores are your business and my business. And so, if your friends ask, it's none of your business, and again, some of that role playing and modeling with them so that they don't get into that habit, because they absolutely will rank themselves as worthy or not worthy compared to their friends.
Yes. You do you is what is popping into my mind. And even for Amelia's younger daughter, it's like, you do you.
Mhm.
You know, you bring something unique to the world that is special and important and has value, and doesn't matter what your sister looks like. You do you. All right. What if grades are all good, but my son is anxious all the time? We have not talked that much about anxiety.
Yeah, but that is classic, too much stuff on your plate.
It's
But- and most
also,
likely the parents are too.
and it's also classic, they're focusing only on one area. They're only focusing on grades, and maybe they're putting so much effort and energy in the stories that they're telling themselves are, my worth comes in the numbers, my worth comes in the grades. And they haven't had the experience of hitting the gym regularly, learning self-care practices. And self-care is such a cliche term these days, but you know, demonstrating, you know, regular walks, going for runs, going out, just having downtime.
Right.
I know so many people who just don't appreciate that downtime is valuable because it's not quote unquote productive.
Yeah, and connecting back again to our scheduling the days for ourselves. I really think family fun needs to be scheduled in every week. And your older kids are going to balk because they've got their own agendas running, and they might not see family time as valuable. I don't think they'll say that it's valuable, but I think they'll reflect back that it was. And so I think we need to continue to try to build it in, and to try to have that be as lighthearted and silly and you know, just, it's like, yeah, whatever it is.
And I also want to add in, you know, the both of you support parents a lot. And I work, you know, with parents and kids in some of the coaching that I do. And I work a lot with the kids, obviously just on test prep. But there are professionals who are actually life coaches for kids or mentors for kids. We still have a stigma in the US in particular about mental health and like going to see a therapist. And we're breaking that stigma. Some of my students are way open about like, oh, I went to my psychologist or I went to my therapist, but it's not normalized yet. But there absolutely are professionals that are kind of in a middle ground where they're not therapists, they're not psychotherapists or psychologists or psychiatrists, but they are coaches and work with kids on some of these other life skills that we're all talking about. And let's be honest, kids don't always listen to their parents. We didn't listen to our parents. But having another member of the team, like another trusted professional that as a parent, you can say, hey, my younger kiddo is dealing with some considerations about like she's not as good enough or not as good as her sister or whatever, or like, here's what I'm hearing from the teachers. You know, some life coaches have very specific curricula that they work with. You know, one of the folks I know, she specifically works with young women on confidence. There are some coaches who specifically support kids who identify in the LGBTQIA community and aren't sure how to engage with their peers or aren't sure how to navigate telling grandma or grandpa or whoever, you know, what their sexuality is. My husband works with kids through the medium of the gym, you know, so he's their quote unquote trainer, but he's really their mentor. So there's all kinds of different professionals that we can bring in, including therapists and psychiatrists. There is a place for that. So look for those resources, I would say, and look for the folks that are a good fit to mentor your kids or provide clinically appropriate support as well.
Good point. Good point. All right. What if everything is good? Should I still have a parent-teacher conference?
Yes.
I say 100% yes at the middle school. I don't know how conferences are you know, going down in high school, how it's structured, if teachers have enough time or not, but
No,
yeah.
they're usually too short, but the point is that you need to connect with the teachers. You may not need to use that connection, but you need to have that connection.
That's a nice way of putting it, Deborah. Yeah.
Well, and just because things are good now doesn't mean that things are going to be good in a week or in 2 weeks. And
Exactly.
I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer on this, but let's talk about some of the things that do happen. Teen suicide is out of control. You know, it's a higher rate. We've got a lot of challenges, especially coming out of the pandemic, that kids are doing. And I am a firm believer, like, you know, I'm not a parent, haven't been one, may never be one, but I'm still a part of the village. And the more that I know that a parent is open to me reaching out to them, just going, look, your kiddo seemed off today. Is everything okay? Maybe parent didn't notice that kiddo was off. And my statement to parent that kiddo was off is what helps the parent recognize it so the parent can then take appropriate action. I absolutely believe having those lines of communication is critical.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Okay, how can I help my kiddo stay organized with schoolwork versus homework? That's a big one, just in terms of as we're transitioning from online learning to in-class learning and the different platforms that teachers are using and all of that. And I think it's a fine balance between how much do we become our child's executive functioning brain versus how much do we really help develop our child's executive functioning brain in terms of that organization. So
I think that with you have to look at the learning styles, because for example, for me and my daughter, I have a different style than she does. So I was over her shoulder going, well, you could organize it like this or organize it like that. And she'd organize it her way because that would make sense to her. So we have to recognize their organization and their go-to organization, and then help them perfect it and streamline it and make it work for them, and introduce tweaks to it for when it doesn't work for them. Like, oh, I didn't know that test was coming. So you say, okay, then maybe you can add a component of the way I organize to your system to help take care of that.
yeah, no, I do 100%. I mean, I'm thinking of all like these parent teacher conferences where we've sat with a kid and said, you could do this or this or this or this, and then none of it happens. And so, yes, so much it needs to come from their reflection and their observation of what's worked in the past, what's been effective, what hasn't. I agree with that 100%.
And I also think it's really important, going back to the idea of, are you their executive functioning coach, or are you coaching them to become their own executive functioning brain? You got to back off. You know, what did you say, Elizabeth? When all the middle and high school kids say is, I wish my parents would just get off my back, stop breathing down my neck. And it is really hard because we can sit here and watch them and go, this is going to end in disaster. This is not going to go well. But you know what? We don't even give them a chance, number one, to prove us wrong, or number two,
And
to go down in a blaze of fire.
I just this week I did have a client follow up with me. You know, I said to her, I said, look, set a schedule, a pretty generous schedule, incoming freshman, of, you know, give him a chunk of time, really like 3 or 4 weeks before you even look at the portal, to help him, give him the space to do that. Let him know that you promise not to look at the portal. Let him know what standard he needs to meet for you to stay completely off his back. Let him know if it's below the standard, what's your approach going to be, right? As in be really clear, and then be clear about the future deadlines. And she was like, Elizabeth, that was so hard for me to do, but I took your advice and I did it. And he totally stepped up and he totally figured it out. And I didn't, you know, I had spent the summer thinking like, okay, well, what's the plan going to be? What do I have to do? How are we going to check in? How is it? And he stepped into high school. And I have found this to be true with so many middle school kids, where we've been like banging our heads against the wall going like, what is it going to take to get this kid motivated, to take responsibility, to get them to focus? And that magic of, first of all, it's a new environment, but secondly, they know it's part of the equation. And they know that that's part of keeping the door open and building bridges to they're getting to choose what college they want to go to, as opposed to a college choosing them, because that's all that's left. And so they don't work in middle school, and then they get it together.
Well, and I also think, how we've been talking about, the life skills and the fact that it's our job to model this for the kids in our world. Think about in an employment situation, right? Well, if an employer isn't happy with the employee's performance, then they're going to have a meeting and they're going to have what's called a performance improvement plan. And they're going to lay out a plan, and it's up to the employee to adjust. And if your kiddo is a kiddo that is a personality that is going to be an employee working for somebody else, this is exactly the same thing as what they're going to experience in the professional world. Now, you may be thinking, okay, but my kid's 12. Correct. They're not going to lose their job over it at 12. At 25, they're going to lose their job over it. So we might as well model some of this in an age-appropriate fashion when the stakes aren't nearly as high, and teach them, look, you're on your own. You're, like I say, you're driving the bus. Where are we going? And
Yep.
then on the other side, if your kiddo is more of the personality like Deborah, Elizabeth, and I are, where they're destined to be bored out of their minds at a desk job and want to be entrepreneurs someday, guess what? The stakes are even higher because ain't nobody else firing them. They're just going to have no revenue coming in, and then they're going to end up back in your basement. So again, like modeling this when the stakes aren't quite as significant is good for them, not just from academics, but from life.
For life. Yeah, exactly. Okay, where do I begin with college stuff? And you certainly outlined junior and senior year. And I've had 8th grade parents ask me, should we be thinking about college? So Clarissa, I'm going to hand that one to you.
Yes, and or yes, but. I like the yes and better. College specifically in 8th grade, not necessarily. I do know professionals who will start with kiddos as young as 8th grade to start exploring what direction they're thinking career-wise. Are you, like, I had no idea until I was in college that there were options in the education sphere other than the route that you both took, which is to get a degree in education and go work in a school district. That's all I saw as an educator. But you know what? I discovered I'm a rock star mentor and coach. I had no idea that that was a direction I could have gone in another, just another avenue in the same space. I never had the opportunity to go, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Like we were talking about earlier. So there are professionals who can start with kids that young, start looking at strengths and weaknesses and how do we leverage those? So that is a piece that I definitely encourage in the middle school to early high school. Volunteer, look for opportunities. If your kid is an animal person, send them to the local
Shelter.
Humane Society, right? Maybe they can go shadow a veterinarian. I love animals, but I don't do blood. Going to veterinarian medicine was not going to be a good fit for me, right? So those are some of the things that we can look at early on that I would highly recommend. Grades from 9th and 10th grade are really important. So is volunteerism, so is extracurricular, so is being a kid and exploring these other things. Really, the summer before junior year is where the test prep piece comes in and the significant college exploration bit. At the same time, if you have a younger kiddo, like Ramilla, you're talking, your kids are about 4 years apart. When you start doing the college admissions process with your older daughter, take your younger one along on some of the college tours and just start exploring. There's no reason that you can't just go visit colleges 9th and 10th grade, even locally, of like, get a different feel of the schools in your area. And then when it comes to end of 10th grade into 11th grade, that's when the real application, like the serious work starts happening. And again, we've got professionals to help with that. We've got some other workshops that we've done through Parent Tween Connection. Feel free to look there. But
Yeah.
that's when and certainly the guidance counselors at school can give you some direction as well.
And the other conversation I would have early with kids is I would do the work yourself, parents, of figuring out what your fiscal reality is and how that's going to translate for schools. And I do think that alongside of, what are the kinds of schools that you can get into, I think starting to talk about the financial piece helps to not leave kids, put them in shock, right?
Right.
Help them understand some of what is your family going to be able to do? What is that going to look like?
And
this
that's
is the reality of
That's
it.
also a good opportunity to remind folks, chat with a financial advisor who can help you look at whatever assets you do have and determine what's the best way to allocate those to be able to contribute in whatever fashion you would like to be able to contribute to maximize those dollars. And the earlier, the better on that.
And there are financial advisors who specialize in the college piece,
Correct.
and they are more likely to know, what kind of financial aid, given your financial profile, what kind of financial aid are your kids likely to get, and or things. That I do think that's the kind of pre-work that parents can start to do without having to put a lot of
And the other thing I would say is there are some scholarships that are only open to 9th and 10th graders. I am not well versed in that range, but Google is a beautiful tool. Scholarships for 9th graders, go check it out. You never know. It's never too early to start looking for free money. It's also never too late. So cool. All right. Well, that should wrap us up. Thank you for joining us and having some really good conversation today. And for any of you who do want to reach out to Elizabeth or Deborah or me, I'm just going to flip back to the last page that has our business information on it. Please, as always, feel free to reach back out to us. You can find any of us on Facebook and on the worldwide interwebs. And with that, we'll be over and out.
It's so funny. I realize you guys have the names of your businesses in your logos, and I don't.
Joyful parenting.
Oh well.
Awesome.
All right.